a production of South Carolina ETV.
Ezekiel told us the day and the hour when this vision came to him. He said it was the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity. The word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. This prophet was chosen to accept the special burden of going to his people where they were, in their state of dejection, having blown it completely, having been conquered and defeated. There they were in despondency in a pagan land, away from their temple, away from their great memorials of God's wonderful work among them. The words of the psalmist reflect the mood of the people so well. "O my God, my soul is cast down within me. Therefore will I remember thee from the land of Jordan, and from the Hermonites, and from the hill of Mizar." Ezekiel was given a message for the people, and it came in the form of a vision. It seems that God was directing this prophet to speak to the people in a kind of a metaphor that they could understand. Visions. At that time, in a pre-scientific age, people dealt with visions, and they dealt with a lot of intuitive, instinctive knowledge that came to them very subjectively. So God uses a vision to say to this man, "My people are down, and I want you to go and give them a message for me." And one of the visions that God gave to Ezekiel was that of a valley filled with bones. Oh, what a symbol. All hope was lost. They were drowning in despair. No sense of the future. No sense of destiny. Ezekiel said that they were very dry, dusty dry. And God told him to prophesy upon the bones. Here was a symbol of God's everlasting faithfulness to God's people. He said, "Tell them, O ye dry bones, I haven't forgotten you yet. Hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live." Near the end of this long and dramatic vision, he was witness to the fulfillment of that promise. He said, "I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I prophesied, there was a noise. And behold, a shaking, and the bones came together. And when I beheld, lo, the sinews and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them, but there was no breath in them yet. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived. They lived. They stood up on their feet, an exceeding great army. They said, Our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. Say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel." Now, I don't care if I'm the last optimist left, if I'm the only optimist left. I want you to know that I want to spend all of my time asking this question: can these bones live? And I want you to know that I believe, as Ezekiel did, that these bones can live. Not long ago, I was caught at Dulles Airport near Washington during all of those awful electrical storms and the closing of the summer season. And there, the U.S. air flights were canceled, and I had to be stranded there. And they told us that we could go and get hotels, motels, and whatever. They gave us the coupons, but so many flights were canceled. All of the hotels around the airport were filled up quickly. And I had to end up way some distance away in a small motel. And then I lost track of my medicine. See, I'm as old as dirt, and I take all these pills like you do, you know. And I take about 9 pills a day, and some of them I have to take 3 hours apart, you know. And I'm not going to break that. The doctor's kept me alive all these years. I'm going to do just what he said. So there I was, my pill. I haven't had one. I had to take one at 9 o'clock, and another one at 12 o'clock, and another one 3 hours later. So there I was stuck, catching up on my schedule. Turned on the television. There was a program from the Apollo Theater in New York. Now, I remember when we wanted to see the Apollo reopened, when we wanted to bring black culture back into Harlem, and when we were embarrassed to have this wonderful symbol of black delight closed, spider webs all through it, mice running around in it. And so they borrowed the money and put a lot of people together and their brains and talent and opened it, and we rejoiced. But then that night I saw about 7 good-looking black women, bright as they could be, standing up in a kind of a contest among comedians. And they stole one joke right after another. Now, I'm from Norfolk, Tidewater, Navy town, and I've heard great cussing in my time. I've heard cussing with finesse and rhythm and poise. And I even know the timing of good cussing and all of that. But I heard some profanity that night I'd never heard before. I heard cussing in a dimension that I could not fathom. Every breath was another profane word. And like the Germans putting words together to make compound words, you know, they were putting cuss words together, compounding it. And they were so intelligent. They weren't splitting verbs. They weren't getting pronouns out of line with antecedents. They were just sprinkling it all with the worst kind of filth you ever heard. And as I listened to it, I said, I wonder if they know this is nationally televised. Do they care how far this goes? Anybody could listen and hear what they were saying. Do they care? These are going to be the wives of our men and the mothers of our children. Is this the next generation? Is this what we opened the Apollo Theater for? To bring this kind of filth back to town? And then when I took my pill, I had to wait for another pill, so I listened to some rap artists who came on. And the cussing got worse. And here again, healthy-looking, bright-eyed, good-looking young people. I know everybody's got to make money some kind of a way, but what they were advertising to the whole world about us was something awful. And I thought about the words of Ezekiel. I said, how can we come back from this? Can these bones live again? And you know, we've traveled a long way in this country in a very uneven journey. We've outlasted 244 years of chattel slavery. Husbands sold from wives and children from mothers. We were set free without last names, without land or money, and deliberately barred from books and learning. But somehow God raised up friends for us, and we were able to come together, build institutions. I read recently about a young fellow named Edwards down there in what's that little town, Spring Hope, Alabama. And he finished Tuskegee in 1893. And do you know he organized his buddies to help build a school right there? They worked all of the summer right after finishing Tuskegee, and they stayed together. Snow Hill, Alabama, that's the place. And don't you know, they said to this white man who owned the lumber mill, said, mister, don't pay us in money because we can figure out how to eat and sleep. We want you to pay us in lumber. 3 Tuskegee fellas in 1893, led by Brother Edwards, and they worked all summer accumulating 2x4s and 4x8s and all of that plyboard. And then they went and built a little school and academy in Snow Hill, Alabama. And later on, the philanthropists came by and saw it. Some of the big foundations came by and saw it, gave them money. And the Snow Hill Academy lasted for about 50 years and sent their graduates all over the country. This was the muscle and the sinew of our people back in those days. I wonder if these young people know, as I heard them with all of that vulgarity, do they know where we've come from and what we've already done until this very present moment? The Reconstruction gave us some hope, but then that was a great illusion, a false start toward our redemption. And from the Hayes-Tilden election in 1876 to Roosevelt in 1932, we too, like the people of Judah, were in our Babylon. Oh, we were like dry bones in a valley. But like the prophet Isaiah said, hope kept rising in our midst. Hast thou not known, hast thou not heard, that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, never gets tired. There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, to them that have no might, he increases strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall rise up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That's our heritage. That's where we've come from. We never thought about cussing our way through our dilemma. Never thought about using that kind of language. We always took high ground somewhere. You never heard a story about a black nanny poisoning a white baby. Had these babies all day long in their care, nursing them and spoon-feeding them. Oh, what a wonderful tradition. Never heard of one of them being deliberately harmed in the arms of a black nanny. But my soul, now we face a generation that has resigned from almost all of that kind of meaningful endeavor so largely. Yeah, they carry guns to school. We never heard of kids cussing out a principal in the principal's office and daring him to respond. They filled up all the jails. I get tired of hearing about the statistics. And now, here we are building more brand new jails for those who are headed for jail right now. Every federal, state, county, and city jail filled up with our boys. Can these bones live again? And when you hear the kind of thing we heard this morning, that question is very relevant. But let me tell you what a college dean said to me in Virginia the other day. He said, Sam, you know, we cannot admit these students to our college from the same high school in groups of more than 3. Now we can't admit 4 or 5 or 6 from the same high school. And why? Because when they get more than 4, they bring a gang mentality here. They move the whole spirit of violence and defiance here. So we take them in 3 at a time and then we stop. The computer shuts off for that high school. When I left Norfolk in 1937 to go to Virginia State College, I went to school way back there along with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and all that crowd, you know. There were 11 of us who went to Virginia State College. 11 of us. All of us wanting to be somebody. We faced all of this race stuff. We faced all of this name calling, all of this stereotyping. Why, they have no idea of the full extent to which we faced it. But we wanted to be participants, and we listened to what people taught us, and we wanted to make something of ourselves. I wonder if these bones can live again. I have a granddaughter in Northern Virginia who told me that most of the black males in her senior class had been to jail, and most of the girls had either had a child or had had an abortion. That's the flavor and the tone and the complexion of a senior class in a Northern Virginia high school. And while the NAACP lawyers were winning 39 Supreme Court cases in a row, and while Martin Luther King was winning moral victories all over the South, and while the Johnson White House with Adam Powell and his other friends were pushing 67 pieces of legislation through the Congress in our behalf, and while Africa was decolonizing and independent black states were being formed, and with new grants and loans for college support, during that time we rose from 22.4% of the jail population to 45.3%. While all of this was going on, God have mercy on us. They increased the jail population by 100%. By 100%. What a paradox. Here we are with a black man just retiring from the chairmanship of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 40 blacks in Congress, 6 in the president's cabinet, One of the richest TV hosts is a black woman. Another of the richest TV entertainers is a black male. The richest professional athlete is black. The person in charge of the Center for Disease Control is black. The poetess laureate of the United States of America is black. The head of the largest pension fund in the world just finished being black, Cliff Wharton. And then, no, I don't mean that. He just finished being the head of the pension fund. You understand? And then the head of the largest philanthropy in the world is black. And by the way, hasn't lost a dime in 20 years, no sexual molestation charges, no bad audits. He just sits there and gives away the interest on $4 or $5 billion a year, and the good times just roll right on. Isn't that amazing? A black woman was heading Social Security, and the list goes on and on. And here today we have with us a black man in Treasury in charge of all the enforcement agencies. Look at all of this. A black man won the World Series twice back to back. With all of this, and meanwhile, here we lead everything in AIDS infections, prison population, high school dropouts. These bones have got to be made to live again. And the breath of the Lord has got to breathe on these bones. Now, what's got to happen to cause these bones to come alive? Well, for one thing, we need to help this generation to know who they really are. They need to redefine themselves. They're not simply the consequence of years of slavery and racism, the objects of chronic discrimination. They're more than that, and somebody's got to tell them they're more than that. They are the heirs of a strong and a noble tradition. And they belong to a people who are the only people in the world's history to survive what we survived in chattel slavery, chains and whips and auction blocks and bloodhounds and lynchings. And then we decided to remain on the same piece of real estate with our former masters and move tediously toward the center of the society with justice and freedom. No other people in the history of the world ever tried that. And they need to know that they belong to a people. This is absolutely unique and unprecedented. Nobody tried it before. And more than that, distinguished by color and hair texture and physical features, distinguished by all of the stereotyping and the rumors put out on us. Look at what we try to do. It's important for us to know African history. I teach it and I love it. And I've spent time, I've lived in Africa. That's not the point. In addition to knowing all about the great kingdom of Africa, they need to know what happened right here when we came out of slavery. They need to know what kinds of people we were. The President of the United States invited us out of the country. William Lloyd Garrison, the great abolitionist, said he wanted us to be free, but he didn't think that we were equal either. We didn't have anybody smiling on us. De Tocqueville said it would be the greatest miracle of all if we should stay here and last and find our way toward the center. Now we've done it. We've got an amazing story to tell. And these young people need to hear it. The other day I was at Delaware State College. And it is not easy for a person my age to talk to college students anymore. Their language is different. We used to have compulsory chapel. They come if they feel like it. While we were walking toward the chapel, they were all walking the other way, going somewhere. But finally, they all made up their minds to come on in there, and the president was so happy. We had a nice delegation there. And when I got into my thing, I put my little notes aside, and I just talked to them like I was their daddy. I just got right down and talked with them. And you know, when I was leaving the campus to go back to the airport, 4 young girls waved their hands, stopped the president's car. We were on our way off the campus. And said, Dr. Proctor, you don't mind if we say something to you before you leave? What do you want to tell me? And by the way, tell me, where are you from? One said, who, me? I'm from Passaic, New Jersey. And another one, she says, me? I'm from East Orange, New Jersey. And another one said, and I'm from Harlem. You are. And another one said, I'm from Bedford-Stuyvesant. Well, what do you want to tell me? She said, you know, we almost never go to convocations, but we went today. And we want to tell you how much we enjoyed what you said. Another girl said, and we were standing in the line just talking, and each one of us said that you made us change our minds about a whole lot of things while we were in chapel this morning. She said, You made us change our minds about a whole lot of things while we were in chapel this morning. And the main thing I talked to them about was this. You are a part of this country. You belong here. Your great-grandparents paid for your existence here. Don't be so tentative about it. Don't be acting like you know another option you've got. You don't have another option. This is the only option left for you. You got to make this thing work right here. That's what I told them. And then I gave them a little lesson in Greek. I said, you know, when I studied classical Greek, every now and then I learned something that would last a lifetime. Simeon Book and I were in a Greek class together, and Simeon said to me one day, he said, dang, you know, Sam, he says, this stuff is killing me. He says, this Attic Greek is something, man. He said, this Attic Greek died a long time ago. It killed all the Athenians, but now it's killing me. But they taught us about a word called polis. Many of you studied the Greek alphabet. Pi, Omicron, Lambda, Iota, Sigma. Polis. Now you already know we get from that word the word police, the word polite, the word politics, the word policy, cosmopolitan, metropolitan. All of that comes from that one root. And it referred to the fact that in ancient Greece, they had a little boundary around an area that they called the polis. Now, you could do any fool thing you wanted to do outside of the polis. But once you crossed the line into the polis, you fell under all of those derivatives: polite, police, policy, political. Once you crossed the line, your behavior changed. The things you did outside of the polis, you couldn't drag that into the polis. Here was an implicit, tacit social contract. You behaved in a certain way in the polis. Your behavior was held accountable. Now here we've got a generation now that wants to be physically in the polis, but does not want the responsibility of being in the polis. And they've got to be told over and over again that this is where we are, and our options are limited. We've got to make sense of the polis one way or another. I'm so glad I never had anybody to touch my life in Huntersville, in Norfolk, in Richmond, in Petersburg, to tell me that I couldn't make it in this country. Nobody told me that the system was so impregnable, the system was so formidable that I couldn't handle it in some kind of way. They told me such crazy things as, Proctor, get ready, there's plenty of room at the top. That's what they told me. By the time you get ready, the whole country will change, and it'll change by the process of you getting ready. That'll be part of the change. You're getting ready. That's what they told me. I read about my friend Earl Shaw up at Rutgers University. If you go by Rutgers in Newark, you know what you're going to find? You're going to find a little physics laboratory right by Smith Hall, stretched right out. Right, looks like it's right on the sidewalk, like they took some of the sidewalk to build it. AT&T spent millions of dollars to build this 70-foot long, 10-foot wide laboratory in laser physics. It's got a thick wall to protect it from any kind of, escaping of some of the things that are going on inside. And I said to somebody, whose laboratory is that? Who's in charge of this? He said, there's a black dude up here named Earl Shaw with a PhD in laser physics. And where'd he come from? And I met him one day. He told me he was from Clarksdale, Mississippi, but not inside of Clarksdale. He came from outside of Clarksdale a little bit. He said that he lived on a dirt tenant farm, and he said that his daddy was shot in the brain when he was 6 years old. He remembers standing by this cheap little pine box casket painted gray with his mother, his young mother, crying their eyeballs out over his dead father lying there, young father. They never found out who shot him or why, but he was shot in the brain deliberately. He said his mother took him on a train to Illinois Central right out of Jackson, headed for Chicago. And they rocked and shook all the way in that dirty coach car. In those days we rode right behind a coal tender, You could ride up at front on the train, but at the back of the bus, with the diesel smoking up front, the coal, so you were wherever it was, incommodious, that's where we rode. And you could see a picture of this young mother feeding this baby those chicken legs out of a shoebox and some greens out of a mayonnaise jar, all the way from Jackson on into Chicago. And then in Chicago, she ran into more violence, ran into more profanity and alcoholism and all of that trouble and failure. She tucked the little boy into the first parochial school that would take him, walked him to school, nurtured his mind, kept him there, and when he finally graduated, he had a scholarship to Urbana, to the University of Illinois. He didn't know what he wanted to major in. He was good in mathematics and in science. He says that the fellow in front of him, when they asked him what was his major, he said, my major is going to be engineering physics. So he said, what do you want to major in? He said, same thing he majored in, and he took engineering physics as well. Well, when Shaw finished, Dartmouth had a special program, specially financed in laser physics, and he was invited to join the Dartmouth program for Master of Science degree. This same little boy who at 6 years old stood in a dirt farm looking down on his daddy's body in a cheap pine box. Now, right now, you go there, you're going to find Earl Shaw in charge of a multi-million-dollar laboratory, and this man has come from a dirt farm outside of Clarksdale, Mississippi. And that's where he is. That's what we want all of our children to understand today. You've got to understand that this system, all of this opportunity, can be exploited. Large part of it has to do with what's inside of you to make this thing work for you. As I said before, I'm so glad that nobody told me that we could not make this work. What can we do now to get this understanding in the minds of young people? Bring them into the polis and help them to understand that they're not here just to be assimilated, just to be accommodated. No, they're here to help fulfill their own destiny and in the process help change the destiny of this great country of ours. And that's my next point. Not only do we have a background of our own that's unique and unprecedented, but America is trying to do something unique and unprecedented, and it is difficult. We're trying to take 250 million people with no royal family, nothing like that, no state church, nothing like that, with freedom of worship, freedom of assembly. Who ever tried it? And then the greatest single minority, 25 million of us, were in slavery here. Who ever thought that they could make sense out of this? And yet this is the great experiment that's going on right now, and we're dead at the center of it. I cannot think of a higher destiny for black people. I cannot think of anything that ought to intoxicate the minds of young black people, such as this challenge. Help to arrive ourselves with freedom and justice, and in the process, change the whole value structure of this society while we go through. And let me tell you something. Don't think that it's impossible, because let me remind you of something. I knew that Mandela was going to come out of jail one day. I knew that. I knew that sooner or later somebody would say he served enough time. But honest to goodness, I thought that when Mandela came out, he would be shaking and trembling. I thought he'd be blind and insane. I thought there'd be one fellow on one side holding him up and one on the other side holding him up. 28 years in a prison for political reform. I thought he'd just be a shell of a person. I didn't know he was going to come out 70 years old, straight as an arrow, with his mind as clear as a bell. And I didn't know he wanted to be bothered with organizing that party again and putting things together. And you couldn't have paid me to believe that he could have talked those white folks into voting themselves out of power. You couldn't have paid me to believe that anything like that could ever happen. But he did. But he did. And this is the kind of vision we've got to have for our young people. All these bones can live. I have a son who's had a great deal of success. He's a general counsel of one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. He makes a lot of money. He won't give me the money. He gives me Bibles and cross pen sets and things like that. But I want some stock options and something. But you know, his grandfather finished Shaw University when Shaw had a little raggedy, unaccredited pharmacy school. Shaw had a law school and a medical school. Shaw was destined to become what Harvard became, but they couldn't get the money together. The Baptists made a big start. But Dr. Tate went as a young boy from Stanton, Virginia to Shaw and finished with a doctor of pharmacy degree. Went to Fredericksburg, Virginia around 1917, opened up a little colored drugstore in a colored neighborhood to service colored doctors and colored patients, and that's all he was licensed to do. He finished a colored pharmacy school to serve colored people. Such insularity, what a slow beginning. But then his son, Coleman Tate, wanted to be a pharmacist like his father, but he went to the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science. And when he retired, he was one of the chief pharmacists at Walter Reed Hospital. And when Eisenhower was dying of a heart disease, guess who was taking the pills to his bedside and feeding them to the President of the United States? Dr. Tate's son. In one generation, from that raggedy little drugstore to feeding pills to the President of the United States. Now, Dr. Tate's grandson, my wife's son, and my son, of course, he didn't start out to be a pharmacist, but he went to Chicago for an MBA and a law degree. And when he finished, he was hired by a pharmaceutical company. And he went right on up the line, became associate general counsel. One day sitting there at the meeting, they were talking about some kind of a discovery they had made, a certain parasite that they had found in working on a problem for Fifth Avenue poodles, you know, dogs. This was in their veterinary research. They found a certain parasite that was killing these dogs, and they found a cure for it, a vaccine for it. They want to make a fortune off Fifth Avenue poodles. And then some scientists called in from way around the world saying, by the way, that parasite you found matches the parasite that we found in the dirty water in Upper Volta, in Chad, in Mali, that causes river blindness. 800,000 folks blind from that parasite. My son's sitting right at the table where the decision had to be made. He said, what do you want us to do? Shall we market it? Market it here for the dogs, but somebody made a motion that it would be unconscionable for them to charge Chad and Mali and Upper Volta for that medicine. I'm not going to say to you that the vote went the way it was because my boy was at the table, but isn't it so good to know that his daddy was a pharmacist, his granddaddy started out at Shaw. Here he's sitting there as a associate general counsel when they've got to vote on what to do. And they voted to give the medicine to Upper Volta, give it to Mali, to guarantee to stop river blindness in that part of the world. That's the image that I want to see. And now my son has moved down to Chapel Hill, down there with his great, his company did $6 billion in revenues last year. And I just told him the other day, he hangs out, you know, with all these intellectual fellas, you know, that run around here, Cornell West and that crowd. They talk together all the time. He and Cornell are buddies. And I said, you know one thing? The next time you leave your office and you get in that limousine to ride home and they put that little light on for you to read the Wall Street Journal in the backseat, you tell the driver, wait a minute, don't take me home right now. Take me 20 miles down the road to Shaw University. Drive me around that campus so I can get out and put my feet on the ground where my grandfather came to a raggedy little unaccredited pharmacy school and started out. Just remind me of how far we have come. Remind me that though they closed the schools in our faces and passed laws that we couldn't read, did all kinds of dirty things to keep us bound in ignorance and in crime and in poverty, here I am, general counsel of this company, senior vice president, And my great-grandfather started out in this raggedy, unaccredited school. Why can't we give that vision to our young people and help these bones to live again? And you know, those of us who have so much need to turn around and help these bones to live. The hardest part about this is that so many of us are enjoying benefits that we did not earn or deserve at all. Isn't that right? John Rawls up at Harvard wrote a marvelous book called A Theory of Justice. It took him 487 pages to say it, but let me tell you what he said in one sentence. He said, we do not have what we deserve in life. He said, we do not all start at the same scratch line, although there's one original position hypothetically for everybody. You were born here owning nothing, having earned nothing, just born. There you are, helpless, and you're a debtor to everybody. But some of us opened our eyes and saw nothing but blessings just dumping on us. I opened my eyes, and there was Herbert and Velma and my grandma Hattie, a slave in Chesterfield County who finished Hampton in 1882, smiling on me. How in the world could I lose? Taught me how to read and sing four-part harmony before I ever got to school. Taught me how to play the clarinet and the piano. Made me go to Sunday school. Daddy didn't send us. Daddy took us to Sunday school. If there was nobody in the Sunday school but one person, that would have been my daddy with his little 6 children there in the Sunday school at the Bank Street back. That's what I inherited. I didn't earn it. You can't get that with a Visa card. It was given to me. Now, all through my neighborhood, there were other young fellas. I can remember all of them. Daddies were drunk half the time. They didn't read in their homes. Nobody went to Sunday school. None of that. They started life beneath the scratch line. I started life way above the scratch line. Everywhere I went, somebody said, aren't you Miss Hattie's grandson? Are you Herbert's boy? Skipped 3 grades. I never was in the 3rd grade, the 5th grade, or the 7th grade. Everything smiling on me. Finished high school at 15, went on to college on a scholarship. None of that did I deserve. I hadn't earned any of it. I started out with a head of steam. Old Norfolk Mission College there had trained my mother and father. They had learned poetry, Paul Laurence done by Alfred Lord Tennyson, and they gave all of that to us in great abundance. And my buddies up the street had none of that. Now, if we want these bones to live again, those of us who have inherited benefits that we did not earn or deserve need to turn around and help those who inherited deficits that they did not earn or deserve, and help them to rise up to the scratch line where we are, so that they may earn and enjoy all of the benefits that we so take for granted. Can these bones live again, O Lord? Thou knowest these bones can live. May God bless you all.